Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday session of Live at the Waterhole. It's me, myself, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your presenter / guide for the session. Just a reminder, as always, the show is live and interactive, so please keep your questions and comments coming through via the different channels. And hopefully we're in for quite a nice session today. You can see the bushes really greening up here at Moela in Botswana. Got a couple peaceful elephants just passing the midday heat away. I'm sure it's quite toasty there, but nonetheless. It's really so nice to see this landscape coming to life again. I feel like we've been daydreaming of this moment when it was in the middle of the dry season. It was really just dusty and barren. It's lovely to see this greenery just popping up and starting to take over. But summer is well and truly underway in the African bush. All the summer migrant birds have returned. The rains have started to fall. It's just a wonderful time. I know in my immediate vicinity some baby warthogs have already been born. Some impala lambs are starting to show up. So truly a wonderful time in the African bush. There's just elephants dotted all over the show here at Moela. Hi there, Lenny. Welcome to the show. Good to also have you tuned in. Quite a clever water trough that's been built here, obviously, to withstand the abuse from elephants. But we'll come back to our Pachyderm friends a bit later. We're going to pop over to Camelthorn. Quite a large crocodile sunbathing on this fine Sunday. Looking definitely very happy. Incredibly blended in. Obviously we can see it quite easily on the camera, but if I had to match the color of its scales to the rocks and dirt around it, it's ever so slightly well camouflaged. Would be forgiving for thinking that's a rock. And that's always what makes it so interesting when you're in the presence of crocodiles. They can either be hiding in the water or around the water's edge, and you could easily step on one of them. So you always have to exercise caution in the African bush in and around water sources where crocodiles are a possibility. And to be honest, if they're a possibility, every waterhole should be, or water body should be treated as if there is a crocodile in it. Ralph, you'd like to know, is the size of crocodiles intimidating in real life? Ralph, certainly when you see quite a large crocodile, I'm talking now from I'd say from already 3 meters upwards, they're quite intimidating, but anything on that 4 meter scale upwards is, it's truly humbling and a bit scary. It's crazy how massive they become. The maximum size of a Nile crocodile is 6 meters, so but yeah, even just pacing out 6 meters it will really drive home the message of how it's tough to imagine a crocodile being that large. But yeah, sometimes when you are in the presence of a very large crocodile, I would certainly describe it as a humbling and slightly terrifying situation. But doesn't have to be terrifying if you are viewing them safely and responsibly. They're part of the ecosystem, and they're just another animal to be admired and appreciated. I think they just require a good dose of respect. Hello, Mr. Elemental. Welcome to the session today. It sounds like you're having a wet and rainy time in Australia. I must say it's quite warm and sunny and hot today in the Lowveld. The rains have been good. So now we've got a bit of sun to kickstart the photosynthesis of all the plants. But we will certainly need some follow-up rain to keep all these young and sensitive shoots going. Dolly with quite an interesting question. You'd like to know how do crocodiles protect their eggs. So once crocodiles have mated, they excavate a nest, generally in sandy soil, quite similar to what we're seeing here, but they dig this nest and they lay their eggs in it. It's probably about a meter to half a meter deep, and they lay their eggs inside the nest, and that's where they incubate. The different sexes are determined based on temperature fluctuations while the embryos are developing, so it can determine if more of the clutch is female or male. But anyway, so yeah, the eggs are buried in the nest underground, and when it's time for them to hatch, they will call to their mother. So relatively protected by being buried in the soil. Of course, that's not foolproof. Monitor lizards will dig these nests up to try and get to the crocodile eggs. Mongooses as well. I'd imagine honey badgers, but those are the type of animals that would try and get to the nest. Of course, the mother crocodile is always very close by, so if she detects anything tampering with the nest, she's very quick to rush up and defend it. So obviously at your own peril to dig into a crocodile's nest. But that's one of the ways she'll also protect it. She's on guard, and then obviously when they hatch, she excavates the hatchlings out of the nest and transports them to the water, and will continue to look after them for a little longer. But after a couple of weeks, I would say, then they're on their own, and they've got to find their own way into the world. The mortality rate of crocodile hatchlings is incredibly high. Not many make it to adulthood, but obviously once they do grow quite large, they don't really have anything to fear or many natural enemies aside from man. Well, we're going to leave our peaceful sunbathing crocodile and pop over to Towel and see what's waiting for us there. Well, that's quite a treat. We can see the rains have also been quite potent here by towel. Plenty of egrets waiting around the edges here. And a few moorhens swimming around. Certainly a fantastic session of birding, my favorite, or opportunity to bird. These all mostly look like cattle egrets. I'm sure they're making the most of the insect population that is coming to life with all the rains and greenery. I know this week after the rains had come and the sun had popped up, there was a lot of termite explosions, and obviously that is a banquet for many animals, birds and mammals included, and reptiles, sorry. So I'm sure these egrets have been really taking advantage of the buffet. You can see a few of them actually foraging a bit in the vegetation, looking for something to snack on. They are also probably grooming and preening themselves a bit. You generally tend to find cattle egrets with large herbivores following them as they disturb insects in the undergrowth or vegetation. So these ones might just be having a bit of a break. But then again, being around all this lush vegetation is quite ideal for them. Quite interesting to see the bickering between them and the aggression. Everyone's kind of got their little spot there. While we leave these egrets for a bit, we're going to pop over to Lentor for a bit more bird watching. Oh, that's quite pretty. Got a few quelias. I saw a weaver for a second. Pretty sure I also saw a firefinch very briefly. Yeah, there's definitely some firefinch activity. There we go. They don't sit still for very long. They are quite busy little birds. But when it comes to looking at these smaller birds of the bush, the best place to view them is often at a waterhole. When they come drink or stop, pause for a bit and away. Otherwise they are incredibly busy creatures. These quelias, of course, are very stunning with their bright red beaks. I was about to say none of them are in the breeding plumage, but we can see a quelia male to the right has just come in with his black mask there. Makes it a very almost drab looking bird even more pretty. Of course they always stick out quite a bit with their bright red beaks, but the males are truly magnificent little fellows. You can also see a few weavers coming there in the transitional plumage. So all the birds are starting to get their nice summer colors. Coming out of their drab dry season winter colors. Obviously some birds don't need to have very attractive plumage in the dead of the dry season where they're not mating. So yeah, that's generally why we see them developing this new plumage as the rainy season starts. Hans, you'd like to know, do droughts affect birds because it is harder to get nest building material? I certainly think that will play a role. Obviously it depends how severe the drought is, but I think your bigger threats during a drought is actually food availability, especially for the seed eaters. If the grass is not growing, as the grass doesn't grow, then that limits the seed eaters, and obviously that's an issue. The other birds that are insect feeders, if there's no rain, populations also tend to crash. There's quite a ripple effect that affects it in so many ways. Lack of water, birds need water to survive, as well as heat itself. If they can't cool down, they also tend to overheat, and that has a massive effect on them. There's been quite a few studies done on this, but nonetheless very interesting. But I do think there would be a slight effect due to nest material, but I think there'd be a number of compounding issues. Unfortunately, our little birds have given us the slip. We're gonna head back over to Moela. Apologies, I got tongue twisted there. Camelthorn, not Moela. Albeit both of these locations are quite close to each other, so technically right, but nonetheless. You can actually see there's one of those crocodile caves that's been excavated. These crocodiles are a bit more unique since they live in a very dry and arid part of the world that is known for experiencing droughts occasionally. Of course, when it does rain here, the rivers are full of life and it's very plentiful, and it's tough to imagine that it dries up. But in the dry season or the prolonged droughts, the rivers almost completely, well, the water completely almost dries up, and the crocodiles will almost head underground to keep cool and survive. In some cases there are small waterholes that they're able to keep surviving in, and they'll live off of smaller things like catching quilias or the odd occasional small mammal until the plentiful times return. But it is very interesting to imagine a crocodile excavating a tunnel like that into the side of a river embankment. It's quite hard to imagine it. I would be the first person to say I think it's not possible, but clearly it can be done.
Do you want to know why impala are the most common antelope we find here in the Kruger National Park? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live. Connect with nature.
The bush, full of beauty, wonder, and absolute chaos. And now, all that madness has its own show. It's called a Wild Bush Week. The countdown of the most outrageous, heart-stopping, and sometimes downright ridiculous wildlife moments of the week. Lions throwing their weight around. Hyenas gate-crashing the buffet. Leopards doing, well, leopardy things. Each week, it's a fresh reel of safari gold. A mix of drama,
She's just got an impala, everybody.
danger, and a healthy dose of laughter. So, if you fancy a highlight show with bite, and I don't mean just the animals, tune in to a Wild Bush Week. You bring the tea, and we'll bring the tusks, tails, and teeth.
Joy, you'd like to know, why do elephants not feed on their knees like warthogs? The reason they don't need to do that is due to their long prehensile trunk. It makes it unnecessary. They can reach and grab everything they need to with their trunk. But you will see elephants sometimes go onto the ground on their knees. But that's more to, if they dig their tusks into the soil, to maybe break it up a bit if they're after mineral substances, or males often do it as a bit of a territorial display or strength of display of might and strength. But yeah, simply put, the elephants with their specialized and well adapted trunk has given them a lot of advantages. There was also a question from Benny asking, how many types of birds are there in the wild? Many thousands. It depends on which part of the world you're in, but I think across the globe there's roughly about 10,000 different bird species. I think a bit more than that, but that's just kind of off the bat. So bird diversity is quite intense and very diverse. I think alone in the Kruger National Park there's over 500 different species of birds that have been recorded. So yeah, one can easily imagine how many different bird species there are then in the world. Southern Africa's list is about just over 1,000 if I'm not mistaken. This is quite pretty. We've got one of the more unique go-away birds from the area having a nice drink. Sorry, we had to switch quite abruptly to catch him before he flies away, so at least we managed to get him in frame. I must just refresh myself on his name. It's on the tip of my tongue and it's frustrating me that I can't think of it now. That's the white-bellied go-away bird. It was driving me insane because I know I have read about this bird before. It's quite a stunning chap. I think they're a lot more pretty compared to the more drab grey go-away bird that is found in southern Africa. But alas, he has left us quite quickly now, and at least we were right to come look here very quickly. I don't think we would have had a good opportunity. We're probably going to go back to our Ellies now, but that was very cool. Brenda, you were asking, I'm loving all the birding questions we're getting today. You were asking if birds that have long tail feathers have an advantage. So I assume you're talking more about the widow and wider birds that the males develop that plumage in the breeding season. The school of thought is that, I mean, there's been a lot of research done over it, but the school of thought is that it's actually a disadvantage, but the females in a way take it that if a male is able to survive with such long and extravagant feathers, it's a sign of his ability to survive and his good genes, which makes them an attractive breeding partner. But I know there was quite a bit of research done on the widow birds in South Africa, where they artificially clipped birds' tails and made some males' tails shorter, left some to be normal, made some of them even artificially longer, and they did find females tended to choose males with the longest tails. So yeah, that's the thinking behind it. It is a huge disadvantage. You can't fly very well, and if you ever see those widow birds, they are not exactly the most streamlined with those big long tails. They do look very beautiful though, but that is the thinking behind it. Quite surprised, those elephants really just got down to business, had a drink of water and moved on. But we're going to do the same and head over to Tembe. Can always rely on an elephant party here at Tembe. We can see the rains have already started to fill up some of these depressions closer to the camera, and there is plenty of mud for the elephants to enjoy now. The bush is looking incredibly green, although the correct term for this habitat is sand forest. It's not necessarily typical savanna bushveld, so it is generally a bit more lush and different. Christy, you're asking, do elephants get their minerals from everywhere or do they go to special places? I think they pick up quite a bit, obviously depending on their food sources, but I do believe they would have specific spots. I mean, minerals are around in different quantities all over the show, but of course certain mineral deposits are more prevalent, and obviously the concentration is higher there. I know years ago there was a documentary on the forest elephants in the Congo and how they would travel to specific bays, as they call them, the forest openings, to get to certain mud deposits that were high in different minerals. But there was also, they followed them going to caves, and they would use their tusks to dig sections of dirt out of the cave, once again to get to minerals. So they are very perceptive of, I think that they use their sense of smell, of course, but they will go to specific areas if they're after certain minerals or they're looking for certain things specifically. But it is very interesting, and of course it's not just elephants. Other animals will also feed on or lick soil that is high in minerals that they might need or is lacking from their diets. I know as a young boy, I was once in Zimbabwe, I was helping reserve management, and if you just leave a block of, they often put salt out, or salt blocks, to help supplement the animals' diets. But what they would do is they'd break up the salt block and incorporate it into the soil, and that way the animals could dig and use it over a longer period of time, as opposed to one massive salt lick that might be carried away by an elephant or some other creature. I think continuing with our discussion about the plumage of birds, a question from Recycled Teenager asking or mentioning male birds have very extremely colorful summer plumage, why hasn't nature given them a camouflage to protect them from birds of prey? So as you were saying earlier, it's only the males that do this, and it's because they are trying to stand out. They're trying to show off to females to grab attention, because you could argue that the females don't develop a bright breeding plumage, and that plays in their favor. They stay brown and drab, so in a way they are camouflaged and they attract less attention to them, especially because they are, or themselves, sorry, because they are roosting, incubating the eggs, so they don't necessarily want that plumage. And there's already a way in which you could see that nature has provided that, or nature or natural selection, whichever term you would prefer. But there's also a lot of other colorful birds made up of greens and reds that also blend in quite well in forest canopies. The Marina trogon, for example, is known for turning its back towards bird watchers, and they use this as a camouflage trick because obviously it's quite hard to pick out green inside a very green forest canopy. But of course birds are not only preyed on by birds of prey, but also snakes, mammals, etc. So it's risky to rely on one certain way just to avoid one predator when the others are also might maybe capitalize, etc. Birds of prey are also quite sneaky. They tend to ambush and wait around, and I don't think camouflage would make too much of a difference in that situation. Generally, if you have a bird feeder or a bird bath, your hawks, etc., will wait until birds their prey exposes themselves, and that's when they strike. You see our woolly neck storks are also looking for a few morsels. But anyway, we are going to pop on over to the hide and see what's waiting for us there. And so the bird watching continues. It appears like we've got a yellow-billed kite in the tree here, looking very happily perched there, watching the day go by. Hans, you were asking, are false eyes on some owls a form of camouflage? Certainly is a type of camouflage, but I think I don't know I must double check what the specific scientific term is, but in a way it's a bit more of a defensive camouflage that tricks predators into thinking that the owl is watching them and it's well aware of its presence, and sometimes it can also be quite intimidating, that bold patterns. You also see it quite similarly on moths. Tends to confuse. I must really go find the term. It's frustrating me. I'm remembering it from high school biology, actually. It's quite a well-known term. But yeah, so it's more, I think, a bit more defensive than trying to blend in. You're actually trying to stand out with those bold markings, etc. and make any would-be predators well aware that you are possibly aware of them, or frighten or confuse them. This kite is having a very peaceful Sunday in his tree. Greg with a question. You're asking, is there any bird species that scent mark? Not necessarily, and none that I can think of. I don't think it's necessarily in the same way in which mammals specifically scent mark. Birds, yeah, not really that I can think of. I think, and this is not a definite rule, but I think birds tend to focus a lot more on audio cues and visual cues. If you look at some birds, their feathers are quite iridescent, and there's actually we see those colors in one way, but birds can are perceptive of different waves of light, so they can also kind of perceive ultraviolet, etc. But that's also not to say their sense of smell is poorly developed. I think they do use it, but I don't think it's as complex as what mammals tend to use. It's for that reason, taste and smell, but why parrots can eat chilies, etc. It doesn't affect them at all. So yeah, it's just an example. Whereas for humans or mammals, etc., chilies are quite hot, and that's how they deter mammals from eating them. So it's quite interesting. Well, we're going to leave our very stately bird of prey here and pop back over to Lentor. It sounds like a few more birds have returned. Plenty of quilias now. You can actually get a few nice close-ups of the males with their black masks. So quilias are one of the most numerous animals in the world. Let's double check. I think it's about 1 billion or so. That's their population. Of course, if you had to consider certain insects, etc. But just a very interesting figure that quilias are one of the most numerous animals in the world. Penelope, I do agree. We've been quite spoiled with all our different birds in the different locations today. It's also quite nice to get the opportunity to focus them on a bit. The cameras certainly, with their zooming capabilities, allow us to appreciate their plumage, etc. a bit more, especially how confiding birds can be sometimes. So they're very calm. Jason, you're asking what is a crop and do all birds have it? So first of all, not all birds have a crop. It depends. Seed eaters tend to have a crop, but sorry, let me stick to the definition. So the crop is, it's kind of like a temporary stomach. That's a very layman's term, but it's a place where birds store their food for kind of softening or pre-digestion before it moves on to their stomach and gizzard to be digested properly. Our quilias have left us again. We're going to pop over to Tembe. No, all the elephants are out. So yeah, a crop is kind of a like I said, more storage, slightly pre-digesting, but they're not really digesting it at all in the crop. But yeah, so it tends to be more pronounced on your granivores, your seed-eating birds like pigeons, doves, the quilias, etc. For example, in herons, it's absent. And then in other species, it's reduced. It's kind of there, but it's not really used. So it does vary. Vultures, for example, tend to have a crop. But yeah, and also sometimes they'll use their crop to store food that they take back to their young. But not all birds have it. So quite an interesting phenomenon. These elephants are looking very chilled at the resort today. It looks very idyllic with all the greenery and the sunshine, and of course all the mud they could ever ask for. Yolandi, you're asking, is there an overpopulation of quilias? It's an interesting question. I think you could say technically yes, but I think that just speaks to their success as a species, how they flock together, their feeding habits, their breeding habits. It's made them incredibly successful and well adapted to spread their numbers like that. But I think in nature, obviously, it's always very balanced. But of course, with mankind's agricultural revolution, with all the grains and stuff we grow, to my knowledge, quilias aren't really in America, or there are no quilias in America or Europe. This is more an African bird, but I'm sure there are similar species to the quilia. But nonetheless, so our way of producing grains on such a large scale, that's almost unending or massive food supply. So I think that really has bolstered the quillia population. Quilias are considered quite a serious agricultural pest in certain regions. They can decimate grain crops for growers. And essentially they're like locusts, just the bird version of a locust. So I think maybe if agriculture didn't allow their numbers maybe to be as bolstered, I don't think their numbers would necessarily be as high. But that's probably a reason for that increase. Melanistic Marble asks, or mentioning, they wonder if all go-away birds have the same call. But I must admit, I know our grey go-away bird called quite well. I must use one of the many resources out there to try hear what the white-bellied one sounds like, for example. I've never heard it myself, but maybe one day. But anyway, I'll find the resource, I'm sure. We're gonna pop over to the hide. It sounds like the abdomen stalks are waiting for us. Well, our abdomen stalk is looking very pretty and relaxed. I can't believe how green it's starting, or has become here at the hide. Almost looks like the lawn of a golf course. I'm quite excited to say our population of abdomen storks has returned near where I stay. I got to see them this week for the first time circling, and I actually saw them this morning again, also next to the roadside. So it's very nice to have them back. They are very pretty storks. On that previous point about the go-away bird call, I did quickly go listen to the white-bellied go-away bird's call. Very similar to the grey go-away bird, that's how I'd put it. And I'd imagine they all have a similar-ish shrill call that they make, but definitely different. But I think if you were blindfolded and you had maybe never seen one of the other go-away birds, you would probably assume it to be a go-away bird. I wonder what that stork's looking like. But he's looking very pretty and stately. I just love those blues and crimson facial markings of theirs. It really is quite striking.
My name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is Paul. And I mean, to be able to share it with all of you. Fingers crossed, and I'll make sure I wear my lucky leopard socks as well.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh! Whoa. This is action-packed.
Would you like to know the difference between a male and female wildebeest? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live and connect with nature.
Oh, she's gonna catch it.
Come on, Tommy! Watch this, we're about to see a kill. You can see how close he is from where I am.
Kylie with a question. What is the point of iridescent feathers? Very good question. If there isn't even much of a point, at least they are very pretty, that is for sure. I remember the first time I saw a sunbird, and that same with hummingbirds. I've never seen a hummingbird, but our African sunbird is the equivalent, and that always took my breath away. But from a biological perspective, the functions or the point of it would mainly be mate attraction. It shows fitness and genetics. Obviously, the female species is a lot more receptive to those colors, etc. To us, they might all look relatively the same, but maybe some iridescence is much more striking, or other males with poorer genes, it might be a little more dull. Social signaling is another way. Can communicate dominance. They can use it to signal the way they're feeling, or to drive home a message to a rival. I'd say those are your main reasons, but yeah, that's the joy of trying to figure out nature. It's always a bit of a mystery, but I'd say those ones are quite well backed up with facts and evidence. Anyway, I'm going to leave our beautiful abdomen stalk, and we're going to head over to Tau. Well, you can see our egrets have headed off a bit into the vegetation around the waterhole, and we've got this wonderful herd of kudu that's come in. I'm sure they're slowly making their way to water. We can see the cows are specifically feeding on young and tender shoots that are coming up. It always gives me anxiety when we have rains and the fresh new shoots come up, and you have lots of hope for them because they need to grow big and strong, that they can make food for the animals in the dry season. And when you see the antelope just mowing it all down, you worry there won't be enough. But of course there's more than enough that comes up. Ooh, we can really see these cattle egrets are running all over the show, hunting and catching what insects they can. I'm sure they're after grasshoppers and the like, but definitely a bit of a buffet for them here. See, we've also got a bit of an elephant's bottom. These two guys look like they're having a good old mud bath. I don't think there's a more idyllic setting on a hot summer's day in the African bush, and to be sitting at a waterhole just watching all the green vegetation, the bird life and the animals, enjoying a bit of the water. You can see the bull that's just joined is about a very proper mud bath, and the other one is snacking on some soft grassy vegetation. It's quite interesting if we watch him carefully how he will put the grass in his mouth in such a way that he doesn't eat the roots with sand, etc. You'll see it kind of chops them off if we watch carefully. There we go, plops out. So he's just focusing on eating the green leaves. He doesn't want to eat the roots and all the sand and mud that comes along with it. It's always amazing. The first time I saw it as a child, it was incredibly fascinating to take note of. But all this green grass that grows here at Tau, I'm sure is like a buffet for the elephants, and a never-ending one at that, because it's essentially a large floating mat here that will always regenerate itself. Especially grass. Grass grows quite rapidly under the right conditions. see these elephants are having a great snack here at the salad bar towel. Stella, you'd like to know, are the structures of elephant bachelor herds as defined as breeding herds? No, not at all. I think that's the short answer. Male bachelor herds or male herds are very loose. They come and go as they please. Some older bulls, you'll see certain bulls associate with them, and they might have a bit of a deeper connection amongst them. But often you'll come across old bulls that will just head off on their own, and a week or two later you'll see them again with a few colleagues or friends, if you'd like to call it that. But no, there's no specific structure that's related to it. They come and go as they please. Obviously there's always a dominance amongst elephant bulls in a certain area, so that's not forgotten of. But it's quite a gregarious and loose lifestyle. They just do as they please. And these elephant bulls are really having a good old feed at the salad bar. Anyway, we're going to leave these two to enjoy their salad Sunday buffet. I'm going to go to Victoria Falls to see some vultures. I'm sure these vultures have had a good feed earlier today here at Victoria Falls. Obviously, due to the changing times of season, we don't catch the vulture feeding at the moment, but I'm sure in a couple of months we will see them again. But nonetheless, they're looking quite happy in the tree. The wind is blowing a bit, but always fantastic to admire some vultures. It was quite touching this morning. I was watching the piece on the vultures that were poisoned in the east, or in the Kruger National Park. And yeah, it's incredibly sad when these magnificent birds are killed through illegal wildlife harvesting, etc. It's just very disappointing, but it is motivating to know how many dedicated and focused people there are trying to look after vultures and keep them safe and conserve them for many generations to come. I'd say it's probably one of the lesser known persecuted animals in Africa. They often get the bad rap as being dirty scavengers, but they play an incredibly important role. I'm going to quickly pop over to Serengeti. We've got a warthog waiting for us. Sorry, waterbuck. Got a bit tongue twisted there. The African llama at its finest. Having a bit of a sip here. Looks like the soil around the waterhole's been disturbed a bit. I don't know if it's maybe rained quite a bit there, or the warthogs have been scratching up the grass around here. But these waterbuck are certainly looking quite fluffy. So it's quite interesting to note this species of waterbuck that you get in this part of Africa does not have the typical white ring that we get on the Southern African species of waterbuck. I didn't notice it for a second, but when I paid attention, it's quite interesting to see the difference. So, for example, if you looked at the waterbuck at Tau, you would see that white toilet seat ring that you may have heard of, but it is absent in these waterbuck. It's quite an interesting feature. I thought all waterbuck had it, but it was interesting to learn the other day it's only certain species. Waterbuck are a bit jumpy. I think there might be an elephant here. I hear a lot of splashing. Well, the waterbuck seem very focused on something else here at the waterhole. Riley, you'd like to know if the waterbuck are shaggier when it is cold. I do think they fluff up their coats a bit more when they are cold or when it's cool. Obviously by doing it, that layer of hair helps trap the body heat that's emanating from them. But I must say, I think at the best of times the waterbuck tend to look quite shaggy and fluffy looking. But yeah, I think when they are cold it tends to be a bit more noticeable. I'm sure it's tough to imagine, but in some of these areas the temperatures can dip below freezing. Taal, for example, would be an area where you would expect below zero temperatures in winter. The Kruger gets close to it, but there is not that cold. There goes the waterbuck. Something scared them off a bit. I'd love to know what's got their attention so much at the other side there. But they are on high alert for any lions waiting to pounce on them. It's quite a nice big herd of waterbuck. And just appears like our waterbuck are a bit skittish. I don't know what gave them such a fright. It's just them at the waterhole, but maybe that's why they're a bit on edge. It also seems like the wind is swirling quite a bit, so they might have gotten a bit of a whiff of a predator that may have been in the area, and maybe put them on edge a bit. They are very interesting animals. Well, I think we're gonna leave our waterbuck congregation and then go back over to our Ellies at Taal. Well, that one elephant bull has gotten very stuck in there. I don't think it's because it's necessarily that deep. I think it's just his weight that's obviously caused him also to sink a bit into the grass there. See, the other bull has had enough grass for one day. He's slowly making his way out of the area. I think once again it's a good example of the looseness and the association. These bulls will definitely know each other, but they're not necessarily sticking around together. It's quite a loose association. You'll probably see these cattle egrets now follow this elephant a bit as he moves through the grass and disturbs a few insects. Oh, something gave him a bit of a fright there. He might have walked into a crocodile. I think he did. I think there was a crocodile there. I saw something moving. I think it gave him a bit of a fright. Not that he has much to be scared of. Well, we're gonna pop over to Serengeti. Our Spider-Man lizard has made an appearance. I remember last time he gave us a lot of entertainment. There we go. He's perched quite nicely on his rock there. I'm looking for something to snack on, as always. We might see some acrobatic skills from him. He catches another dragonfly or wasp that might be buzzing around here at the water's edge. I do love that they're known as the Spider-Man agama, or as an informal name. I think it's very fitting. That blue and red is on point. Oh, he's disappeared. We'll come back now. I'm sure he's just hunting. We've got some more birds waiting for us. Off to Lentor we go. It's a beautiful lilac-breasted roller. Very pretty to see here by the water. They are such gorgeous birds, the rollers. Definitely one of my my top favorite birds. I enjoy watching rollers quite a bit. They are voracious hunters, of course. I've seen them hunt centipedes and scorpions a few times in the Kruger National Park. I'm sure this one is also necessarily waiting for a snack to stroll on by that it can pounce onto. They unfortunately don't have the prettiest of bird calls. They've got quite a deep, throaty, guttural call. It doesn't do them any favors, but at least they make up for it with their coloration. Ursula, you were mentioning about the agama always being there at Serengeti. And do agamas have territory? Yes, so there will be a dominant male in the area that will chase out other males that are competing with it. So yeah, I'm sure that fellow is the main honcho there at the Serengeti cam around the waterhole, and he calls the shots. Interestingly, some non-dominant or younger males will actually pretend to be females to go under the radar, and they will in that way steal mating opportunities or operate in the same habitat as same areas of the territory, of a dominant male like that. Very interesting. Well, our rhoda is certainly looking quite happy and calm today. It's not often that you rarely see them at a waterhole. They tend to be out in more open savanna habitats. You don't often see them in very wooded areas, but I'm sure it is a bit more open around the area. I think I just wouldn't expect to see one necessarily around a waterhole, but wonderful treat for us on this Sunday to be able to admire it. This roller is just quite peacefully passing the day. We've got the occasional quillia also flying past as they stream out of the waterhole. I'm sure he's watching the madness from above. I see a few comments speaking about the beautiful colors of the roller. I know in Afrikaans it's called a trouwpand, which is, if you translate that to English, is a wedding ring. So early Afrikaans settlers were reminded of wedding rings when they saw the beautiful colors of the roller. I think it's quite a beautiful, or a nice name. But yeah, all the roller species are quite pretty. The European roller that's also now returning to Africa is not necessarily as pretty, but it has got quite a beautiful blue cover nonetheless. But maybe not as striking as a few of the other ones.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
The Wild with Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
My full name is Cedric Leslie Dold. The best driver at Wild Earth, it is me. I believe I'm the best driver. I think so because I've... Best part of my job, I say, is just to try and look out for these animals, track them down. I love tracking animals. I love looking for, fresh tracks, and if you can find them, it's just at the moment of accomplishment. If I wasn't a presenter for Wild Earth, I would be the drummer for AC/DC.
Ah, the bush, full of beauty, wonder, and absolute chaos. And now, all that madness has its own show. It's called a Wild Bush Week. The countdown of the most outrageous, heart-stopping, and sometimes downright ridiculous wildlife moments of the week. Lions throwing their weight around. Hyenas gate-crashing the buffet. Leopards doing, well, leopardy things. Each week, it's a fresh reel of safari gold. A mix of drama,
She's just got an impala, everybody.
danger, and a healthy dose of laughter. So, if you fancy a highlight show with bite, and I don't mean just the animals, tune in to a Wild Bush Week. You bring the tea, and we'll bring the tusks, tails, and teeth.
And see what's going on there. I think what was waiting here for us has disappeared. I see we've got a warthog popping its head out. A local lawnmower. Well, unfortunately those warthogs gave us a slip, but we're gonna stick around and see how Elephant Bull navigate his way ever so slowly out of the swamp here. But Tao's been quite productive. I see we have a few springbok that have come in for a sip of water. We'll see them from time to time here. It's always pretty to see them. Also a lot of other prolific bird life. There appears to be a heron of sorts. I can't see the coloration too well, but I would assume it's a striated or green-backed heron, but its name is also now changed to little heron, so you're welcome to use any of the three names. See, we've also got a knobbed duck at the back there, looking very pretty. Can't see its knob too well. Actually quite a few egrets that are, or herons sorry, that are trailing this elephant bull as he grazes through the grass here. Obviously disturbing a lot of aquatic and insect life, so it's a good opportunity to pick up a snack. Yes, but this elephant bull has had a good ramble through the grass here. Got a decent Sunday lunch for him. Reminds me so much of the salad buffets that you used to get in restaurants. They're not very common anymore nowadays. But he is having a grand old time. I have a feeling he's probably going to walk a bit closer to the camera. I can't imagine he's going to get out to the left of the screen since the lodge is there. Must be quite a wonderful scene if you're at the lodge to see this in person. I'm surprised we don't necessarily see more elephants feeding on the grass. I think it's such a prolific food source for them here. Especially if you consider grass really does regrow quickly under the right conditions. And this grass here has got an unending supply of nutrients and water. Pretty much a hydroponic setup. See, this bull is navigating his way through the mud. It's a bit sticky, I'm sure, but not a challenge for a creature of his strength. It's always such a nice thing with the towel camera for me. There's pretty much something going on in every direction. It doesn't matter where you choose to watch. It's the focal point of the elephant, for example, or some of the birds in the background. Always quite a bit of activity to enjoy. Looks like the noble duck at the back there is chasing the coot. Bit of a disagreement taking place there. I must say this elephant looks like the definition of contentness or happiness. Just looking very relaxed and happy. I think when I see elephants like that, I would not mind spending my life the way they do. Life looks good, but of course this is also the nice side of it. I don't think being an elephant bull in a fight is too pleasant. Oh, he's ripping up large mats of grass. I do enjoy, you can see how he's using his tusk there to help lift it a bit, and how he just kind of chops off the roots, drops them out the side of his mouth there. Stunning. Endogamy, you'd like to know what is the temperature there now. It's about 28-30 degrees Celsius. So not too hot, but that's quite warm. I realize I do say that's not too hot. Maybe that's just because I live near the Kruger region, or in the Kruger region, where it is generally quite warm. So considering it can get much hotter, 30 degrees Celsius is not too hot for us. But where I used to live, 30 degrees was quite a warm day. Nathan, you were asking, is life harder for elephants with short trunks? Certainly so. Obviously that elephants that have shorter trunks, it's due to snares, or sometimes it can be from maybe predation, or not predation, but maybe an injury from a crocodile, for example, or something, but generally it would be snares. But yes, definitely, of course, those animals will struggle if they lose the tip of their trunk, that prehensile tip that they use to grab things. It's already a bit of a challenge. But and of course the reach and the distance from which they can pick things up or gather things is reduced, so it is a bit of a challenge. It's not to say it's a death sentence. You see plenty of elephants that do continue to survive. I think their lives are just tougher, and I think it's generally more in drought conditions or tougher conditions where they'll struggle a bit more than other members of their population. But they are incredibly resilient animals, and they are able to survive. Of course, elephants also protect each other to an extent, so they will assist, but yeah, it's not a death sentence. Probably why we don't see too many elephants here. I do realize it's quite a slog for them to get out into this section of the waterhole with all the grass. So obviously it's more the larger, bigger bulls that are able to negotiate it. You can imagine a smaller animal might actually get stuck in this. Sandy Franklin, welcome to the show. What have you missed? So we've mainly been watching these elephant bulls enjoy their salad bar, but we've had some great bird watching across different locations. A couple go-away birds in Kenya, Arola, Quilias, our abdomen storks. I'm trying to think, we've also seen a kite. What else have we maybe seen that I'm missing? But yeah, we've been watching a lot of birds today. Oh, we started off with a lot of egrets here at Tau. So the birding is really great at the moment. But of course that is quite normal for the summer time of year in Africa. Birding is always at its peak. It's quite funny, if you are planning a safari to Africa, of course the dry season is the best time, because the vegetation is a bit more sparse and the water sources are fewer and far between. So yeah, your game viewing is generally a bit more successful, and with water sources being a bit scarce, it also means predators can focus on game where it's congregating. And you wouldn't want to necessarily do a safari in summer due to the heat, and that game viewing is also a bit tougher. But when it comes to bird watching, the opposite is true. The dry season is not the best time, because most birds have migrated away, and in summer the birding is even better. There's just a proliferation of birds and different species. So it's quite interesting to see the two polar opposites of it. I see there was a question from Mace. Won't elephants get stuck in that mud? I do certainly think it's a probability. I think the bigger bulls, with their strength and their size, are maybe able to negotiate it a bit better. I think smaller, younger animals might struggle there. They more than likely could get stuck. But it's a very valid point. I've always wondered why we don't ever really see the breeding herds in this section, and I think it is to do with getting stuck side of things. I mean, we can see how deep this bull sinks down into the mud, so it would clearly does take quite a bit of strength to maneuver through here. Cool, Joe, you're saying this is a feast for this elephant. It certainly is. He has booked himself into the all-you-can-eat buffet this Sunday. I think he's having a great time. And this is quite easy food for him to digest. It doesn't take much chewing. It's soft and green, full of minerals and nutrients. So definitely worth the bit of hard work it takes to get here. But that long trunk also, you can just kind of reach around him without having to move too far. He just has to reposition every once in a while once he's laid everything down around him. Jolene, you're asking if this patch is considered a wetland. Oh, there goes I think the elephant got a bit of a fright for that heron. That was that little heron, or greenback striated heron as it was formerly known. Jolene, you were asking if this is considered a wetland. Technically, yes. Obviously, it's artificial in nature. This is a pumped waterhole. I don't believe it to be natural. But all this grass is essentially a floating mat of vegetation. So I think if the grass wasn't here, it would look a bit more like your standard typical waterhole in an arid area. But all this grass that floats on the surface is quite a good thing, because it prevents erosion, nutrient cycling. It attracts a lot more birds than if it was just a muddy puddle in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, it does act as a wetland. You've got the grass cycling the nutrients and purifying the water somewhat, and the whole ecosystem kind of builds on top of that. Essentially, when you build a water source for animals or a drinking spot for them, this is what you aim for, as natural phenomenon as possible, and a natural ecosystem that kind of leverages off of it. This is quite a good example of it. Quite an impressive feat of strength as we see the bull pull his feet out of the mud. You can see that's taken quite a bit of effort to get that right. Quite curious about this heron to the right of the elephant. It looks a bit more different from what we actually saw, that little heron that flew past. It looks a bit bigger. Could be a night heron perhaps, but I can't see clearly enough to make that identification. just size-wise, it already stands out from the little heron. Grant, you'd like to know if oxpeckers if cattle egrets perform the same duties as oxpeckers. For all intents purposes, yes. You won't really see them obviously on the smaller animals, but they will hitch a ride on buffalo and hippos at times, and they will pick off ticks if they see them. They don't do as good a job as oxpeckers would, but they at times will provide a similar service. I think obviously oxpeckers are a lot more smaller and less obtrusive, even though we sometimes see them climbing into animals' nostrils and ears. But I think they tend to just focus on catching insects that are flush, but that also can provide a bit of a helping hand if they're eating ticks that are around in the area. That means there's ticks to crawl up on the animals and bite them. But we're gonna, just for a bit of a scenery change, pop over to the hide. I'm sure we'll probably come back to this fellow a bit later. Oh, our beautiful Abdom stalker is still doing much of the same thing, just taking a peaceful Sunday. But it's quite a nice shot to be able to, or scene to be able to appreciate him in. Looks like our stalkers may be considering a spot to rest. Oh, or not. He's just stretching a bit there. I'm sure he must have a few friends in the area. think a week or two ago there was quite a few stalks here at the hide, but quite possible that they've migrated further south, chasing the rains as they fall in the different areas. I know it's been very much an insect explosion here in Hoedspruit since the rains arrived. I have almost gone deaf from all the cicadas that have popped up near our house, but those are good problems to have nonetheless. Our stalk is on his way to do something. He has disappeared. It seems a bit like he maybe caught something there. I see him swallowing or grabbing something. Also helps with a bit of perspective. I was wondering where he disappeared to, but there's a bit of a gully or ditch over there. But he does seem to be on his own. A lot of his friends have clearly moved on or are foraging elsewhere. Anyway, I'm gonna pop on over to Tembe, see what's going on there. Very much a social gathering today here at Tembe. Everyone thoroughly enjoying the mud. Really stirring it. You can see they're not using that one that they normally use at the back. Now that these ones are full back. There's quite a few large bulls, but there's quite a big one there in the middle. It's got very long pointed ivory, but Tembe elephants have got very good genetics for big tusks. I think the most well-known tusker at Tembe will always be Isilo, who passed away I think almost about 10 years ago now, but he was a very pretty elephant. I didn't have the privilege to see him in person, but I did see pictures and videos. Kendra, you'd like to know if elephants ever excavate holes that are too deep. I think by their standards maybe not too deep, might be a bit deeper for other animals, but the way elephants dig with their feet, it always makes the hole quite sloped, so over time with a bit of erosion etc it could be, but even then no, it wouldn't, it would still actually remain quite open-ended or shallowish. But when they are digging for water, it is surprising how deep they can excavate to try and get to the water, but it wouldn't necessarily be a deep or dangerous excavation with sheer drop or sheer walls. But it is quite cool how they're able to dig some holes or excavate a bit to get to what they need to. Just another example of their sheer strength, being able to use their feet like that as large shovels. Elephants certainly have a winning body design for the African bush, that's for sure.
I get to wake up every morning and go out there and look for cats. I get to create my everyday safari for myself. I grew up in the sort of central eastern suburbs of Johannesburg, fully qualified trails guide and a fully qualified nature conservationist. I love the wild places. I love being in the wilderness. It's probably one of the best jobs I've ever had and probably ever could have.
Morning everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Wow, that was amazing everybody.
James, you had a question. In man-controlled waterholes or artificial waterholes, do hippo or crocs make them their home? Definitely so. It's not a issue for them. Rosie's Pan, for example, is an artificial waterhole where a hippo lives there. And trying to think, there's another one. I don't know if it's Simbavati. But anyway, there are quite a few artificial waterholes where hippos are definitely present. I don't think we always notice the crocodiles, but they'll also happily make use of it. I think in a very artificial waterhole, however, crocodiles can live and survive there. I don't think they'd necessarily be able to breed unless the conditions around the waterhole would allow them to dig a nest, etc. So if it's in an area where the ground is very hard, I think it would be a bit of an issue. So we had a large bird swooping in there. I think it was one of the woolly neck storks that operate around here. I do love how all these elephants have taken on quite a similar skin tone from mud that they've been splashing themselves with. Everyone's got themselves a new paint job. You can see the woolly neck stalkers just patrolling to see what it can find that's been stirred up here. But it really looks very lush and pretty at the moment here at Tembe. As things start to wind down on the show, thanks again to everyone who joined today. It's really been a great session, lots of fantastic bird sightings and some nice elephant behavior. But thanks again to everyone for joining, and hope you enjoy this afternoon's drive. I'm sure it's going to be a very hot one, but I'm sure the sightings will be great. Thanks again everyone, it's been a really nice Sunday session, and I hope everyone has a great week ahead and enjoy it. I'm sure all the elephants are wishing us the best today in Tembe. It's been fun finishing off with them.